Peace and blessings. It's Wednesday, February the 13th, the year 2019. And tonight I completed my listening to the full 8 hours and 30-something minutes of a book titled Ghost, My 30 Years as an FBI Undercover Agent, about the career of Michael R. McGowan. I think he had assistance of writing the book by Ralph Pizzullo, and I think it was narrated by some guy named Mike Dawson. Now, this reminds me of Bill Fulton, the evil, reprobate degenerate from hell who wrote a book called How I Took Down a Dangerous Militiaman with Beer, Badassery, and whatever. I don't even remember the title of his stupid book, but it's just full of arrogance and how he pretends he's a 007 undercover man taking down dangerous Schaefer Cox, and he infiltrated this deep organization, dangerous organization. So as I'm reading or as I'm listening to this book, which is about the career of Michael R. McGowan, I took some notes. And the main reason I listen to books about FBI agents is I want to understand the mindset of my enemy. And I consider the entire organization of the FBI not only my personal enemy, but an enemy of the American people, an enemy of freedom, and an enemy of liberty. The FBI thinks of themselves as overlords of society. They break our right to privacy. They listen on our phone conversations. They track us by putting devices on our vehicles. They have crossed the line on being an organization that it used to stand for, I think, fidelity, bravery, and integrity. It certainly does not stand for that nowadays. And I pray that God Almighty, who created the entire universe, rains down justice upon the FBI, and that the organization goes down in history as a shame that America even had such an organization as corrupt and dirty and filthy as the FBI. Peter Strzok was a good example when he testified before Congress. And of course, we know the reprobate traitor, son of Belial, stab his own grandmother in the back for a few dollars. Bill Fulton, they represent the FBI undercover informants. But this guy claims to have some of the best experience as an FBI undercover informant in the country. One of his famous phrases is rub some dirt on it, indicating that no matter how bad things get, if you break a bone, if somebody bangs you upside the head, if you get hurt, just be tough and rub some dirt on it. He claims he got that, I believe, from his father, who at times was a alcoholic and was very brutal, or I guess violent with not only him, but his brother and his mother. This is a very testosterone, adrenaline type of book where he brags about how tough he is, and he brags also about neglecting raising his family in order to pursue cops and robbers with the FBI, and you can tell he gets a great deal of personal identity and personal. His psychology is built on his identity as a rock star. He refers to himself as an undercover rock star in the FBI, and that he has more experience with infiltrating mafia organizations and other situations than anybody in the FBI. He mentioned that he went to get awards from James Comey, and he acts like he's so humble, and while he tries to not sound like a glory hound, you can see that his ego and his desire to be an alpha male within the FBI just reeks through his writing. And he talks about he didn't want to go receive an award from James Comey for the work that he did with El Chapo to bring the drug lord El Chapo down and to put him in prison. But because he respected the work of his co-workers, he went and received an award from James Comey, the FBI director. And you can tell that these FBI comrades, they are circle jerks, and they play off each other's camaraderie, and they build each other up as almost a legend in their own mind as they pat each other on the back and tell each other how great they are and how good their disguises are and how good they can deceive, the poor old drug dealers who want to hurt America. But yet he ignores the CIA drug running that FBI agent Richard Taus worked to expose. And of course, Richard Taus is a true American hero and stood up and tried to expose the drug running of the CIA, as well as Richard Taus was part of the Tet Offensive in the Vietnam War, and he was a Chinook helicopter pilot. The other thing that struck out at me, he refers to someone had said to him, Michael R. McGowan, that he's just one chromosome away from being a bad guy. And he's paid by the FBI to hang out at strip clubs day after day, week after week, month after month. And he claims that he would resist the naked ladies, these beautiful naked ladies that would gyrate on the poles at night, because he would pay another FBI female agent to come in and pretend to be his girlfriend all the time. Our tax dollars are paying this Michael R. McGowan to sit week after week, month after month in strip clubs and to listen to people's conversations. He also talks about going to adult sex stores and seeing naked men tied up in bondage straps with balls in their mouth, and how he's paid to hang around these particular individuals and think like them and talk like them, and that he's one chromosome away from being just like them. Well, I would say he is just like them. The only difference is he's paid with our tax dollars to go hang out and engage in this type of activity. He talks about how he knows how to work the system so that in court it won't look like they're entrapped. But we all know that the FBI are specialists at entrapping innocent people. And he talks about the things that he must do in order that the courts don't find for entrapment. So he's a specialist. You got to understand, he is a paid professional liar. He's a paid professional deceiver. And he's basically a child of the devil, and he gets paid a lot of money for it. The FBI will fund him money for fancy cars, fancy jewelry, fancy clothes. And so that when he goes into these drug lords and strip clubs and all the nefarious places that he has to go, he can play the part of the undercover agent. And our tax dollars are going for this type of behavior. Of course, he thinks he's going after the bad guys, and he considers himself a good guy. And he says there's a fine line that he does not cross. But we all know that that's just for the purposes of writing the book. He talks about how early in his career, his own FBI management turned on him because one of his coworkers signed out some drug evidence using his name, but he recognized the handwriting. And the FBI management wanted to put him in prison. Isn't that ironic that his own FBI would have thrown him into a lifelong prison sentence if they could have, but by chance, he recognized the handwriting of the other FBI coworker who sold him out and betrayed him. So even within the FBI, they betray each other, and management does not stand up for the workers. And if you are just a regular special agent within the FBI, you should learn from this book that your management will not support you when your own wickedness gets exposed. They will sell you down the river to save their own hides. And even your coworkers will use your own name to sign out drug evidence, and they will blame it on you. Again, I think I referred to this already, that he thinks of himself, Michael R. McGowan, as an undercover special agent FBI rock star. And he talks about how he hires lady FBI agents to walk around in bikinis pretending to be part of his entourage and his girlfriend, so that other drug lords will pay him attention and give him the time of day. He brags about how he put the job ahead of his own family and his own children, raising his own children. We pay this man to travel, to live luxuriously, and to fake out, and to deceive and lie. It's exactly the activities that Satan participated in the Garden of Eden. Satan was a deceiver and a liar from the beginning, and a murderer. So also you can tell in this book that Michael R. McGowan is a disgruntled employee. There were times where he was very angry with the authorities and the management of the FBI, but he tries to act like he's loyal to the organization. But if the management of the FBI is corrupt and the workers of the FBI are corrupt and the fruit of the FBI is corrupt, there's no need to be loyal to a satanic organization such as the FBI. He refers to other people after he had got some of these assignments and successfully put these drug lords in prison. And keep in mind that the prison sentences he refers to, as an example, if you look up Joseph Burke, B-U-R-K-E in Boston, look up Joseph Burke, Boston arrest, a violent killer that he supposedly was gone undercover to help trap and to help convict. This violent killer who was known to want to murder people and bragged about putting on an African-American mask and pulling the gun while it was in somebody's mouth so the back of their head will blow up all over the floor. He was involved in a murder for hire scheme. This Joseph Burke, which you can look up on the internet, got 10 years. 10 years in prison with 3 years supervised parole. Now, if you compare that to someone like Russell Landers, who never hurt anybody, a Schaefer Cox, who got 26 years, Russell Lander, 44 years, Ed Brown and Elaine Brown, 40 plus years, right? David Hinkson never hurt anybody, 43 years. So he brags about some of the dangerous criminals that he's put behind bars and how bad they were and violent and murderous. And then he says, and we got him for 10 whole years. Give me a break. Daniel Riley and Jason Gerhard, young men who supported Ed and Elaine Brown, have already served 10 years in prison and they never hurt anybody. So we paid this man to live luxuriously, to wear fancy jewelry, fancy clothes, drive around in fancy cars. And he talks about how the FBI turned on him and would have put him in prison had he not been able to find out his coworker. He talks about being part of the Endure team, who was a specialized, the best of the best of the best undercover workers. And I think it stands for, I don't know what the E stand for. It probably didn't have an E. It was just Endure, National Dedicated Undercover Response Element. And he talks about how he considered himself part of the crackerjack FBI team that infiltrated some of the biggest drug lords in America and global. They tried to get some of his coworkers, who he always talks about his camaraderie with his coworkers, on the personal use of funds to buy an umbrella. But he found additional ways to buy the $159 umbrella or the $59 umbrella. It reminds me of how they went after Richard Taus. I believe it was a $9 gas bill. The very first charge of what they charged Richard Taus was filling up a personal car using a government credit card, and I think it was $9 of gas. And so that's how the FBI will begin to eat their own, is they go after them and say they used a government credit card for personal use. And he talks about, poor me, my management wouldn't approve an umbrella when I was undercover and I had to buy it because it was raining. He also talks about global drug kingpins. And once he got the conviction because of his hard work of like 3 years undercover work of playing like he's a drug lord infiltrating this mafia drug lord organization, that when he finally got the conviction, they would get like 6 years in prison. That's different than the Joseph Burke. Joseph Burke was a violent killer. I don't think Joseph Burke was part of the mafia. But he talks about when he finally does get a conviction with one of these terrible mafia figures, that they have to go to prison for 6 years. And you compare that with some of the patriots that we know that have been entrapped innocently by the FBI, and they've gotten 30 years, 36 years, 43 years. And so I just don't have any respect whatsoever for Michael R. McGowan or his book. I wanted to read to you someone else's, I'm going to read to you someone else's review that I thought was very astute. And this was left on audible.com. Keep in mind, I've been a member of Audible, which allows me to listen to one Audible book a month for a membership fee. But here's what this reviewer said about this book. I lost count of the number of times I rolled my eyes. Here's a quick synopsis of the story from the author's perspective. I'm the toughest and smartest guy who ever lived. I single-handedly foiled every one of the most dangerous criminals in U.S. history, despite the incompetence of FBI management. I'll say a few things and try to make you think I'm being humble, but it's hard to conceal this much awesomeness. That's a very good review, because this author, Michael R. McGowan, he's very arrogant, very prideful, and he works for an organization that basically is an arm, an organization that serves Satan. And I'm praying for the day that the FBI is destroyed. I'm praying for the day that the FBI becomes extinct and is eradicated and is exterminated from the American landscape. And that when we look back on history and we think of the letters FBI, that we think of what a shameful thing that organization was, and what a shameful thing that we allowed them to become overlords of society and to entrap innocent men and to pay arrogant, prideful men like Michael R. McGowan to go around and to play cops and robbers on taxpayer dime and to act like they're serving the best interest of America, when in reality, they're serving the best interest of themselves. That's all I got to say. I'm not a fan of the book. I'm not a fan of Michael R. McGowan. I consider the whole book, it is good to kind of know your enemy, so I don't consider the 8 hours and 35 minutes a complete waste of time, but it just lets you know the mindset of the people that you're dealing with whenever you meet somebody that claims to be working or to have worked for the FBI.